Welcome back to another episode of Gora the Explorer. This is episode number 3. And today I'm going to be speaking about pushy parents. Now, we know, as well as everyone does, in every culture, there is parents of every different scenario. You've got the pushy ones, you've got the laid back ones, you've got the cool ones, you've got the friend ones, you've got the I'm just a parent and I just treat you like a parent. And therefore, there's always going to be complexities. But when I speak about pushy parents, I'm talking about my experience and my experience with the South Asian community, and also with the community of, the clients that I have, because there's an element of pushy parents. You always get sidetracked, and you always have this ability to kind of be in, I guess, thrown off track by people that are around you. Everything from what they say, how they say it, how they kind of reinforce your behaviors, or they kind of tear them down. It can be quite exhausting to go through this process of completely changing your life without there being some pushback. So, first thing about pushy parents is, like, regardless if they're quote unquote pushy or they're just curious, it will feel like they are doing something for you or working against you, because they truly do not understand. Because most people, like my parents didn't understand when I first went on a diet. They were like, what are you doing? They'd never been on a diet before. They were kind of health conscious but overweight. So they thought that being healthy was having pasta and protein, or it was having a salad once a week. And then maybe, cutting back on the chocolate at weekends, or only keeping takeaway to 2 to 3 times a week. So everyone has their own expectations and navigations of standards around what healthy is or what a diet is. So it's our job, through doing these things, to educate them along the way. They're never going to get it along the first point. They're never going to try. They're never going to do it without any pushback. You're going to get it. And it's how you react to it determines the result of this individual and how they present to you and how they do things with you. For example, like when I was dating within the South Asian community, I notoriously went around to a friend's house with the girl I was dating, and I had to say no 8 times for a Diet Coke. 8 times for a Diet Coke. And that's not because the person was pushy. They were trying to, I was going to their house for the first time. They were trying to show me love. They were trying to cater for me. But I had to say no for 8 times for a Diet Coke. A Diet Coke, 0 calories. It's no calories, which means there was no impact to my life, whether I had one or I didn't one. I just, at that moment in time, didn't fancy a Diet Coke. And you have to understand the parameters of when you go into a diet, when you're changing these things, what you are going to get put up against and how you navigate those. So step number one, when you're looking at pushy parents, you have to look at what you're doing and how you're training them. So if you're constantly going on diets and you're failing at them, and then you're eating chocolate with them at weekends, and maybe you're having the chevra with them, or you're kind of just having dinner with them and quote unquote indulging when they kind of ask for something, you're training them to ask again and say things. And you're training them to kind of keep asking, which is a part of this process, is where if you keep your word, they'll think you're serious. Like my mum and dad, I've told them a million times what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a this. I'm going to be a footballer. I'm going to go and play basketball. I'm going to get my head down and work on this, this, and this, and this. And over time, I didn't know half the shit that I was supposed to say I was going to do. So an air of caution always comes around with things where you're going to change your lifestyle. And therefore, there will be an element of this where it comes into, as you create evidence, as you create the thing that you're doing, they will get on board with it once they see you're serious. Once you're not serious about it, it can be hard to get them on your side for that. Oh, here we go again. It's Nathan on a diet. Oh, he's going to last 2 weeks. And then when I ask him about the chocolate, he's going to cave, and then he's going to just go back to normal eating. And then you train them on these particular things. And then no wonder they're skeptical, and no wonder they're pushing back along the way, because you've trained them this way. So that's step number one, is that you are your environment. You are what you put out there. And if you are a person who doesn't stick to your word, be sure that your mum and dad, your parents, your aunties, your family see these things and, like, don't think you're serious. And it's about explaining that and actually keeping to your word as step number one. Step number two is navigating communication. Now, within the community, there is this taboo subject that you can't have a conversation, or the communication is quite an untapped thing. There's a lot of people in this world now. I've got a client called Ruthby, who's massive into building within the South Asian community, helping people change their relationships and communication with their family members. I know, Sunny, who's a love coach. He does a lot of stuff around creating communication and connection and with the people, because they haven't had it in their life. There's subjects like menopause, menstrual cycle, and sex before marriage and like who they're dating, all are taboo subjects. So when things come around to communication, it's hard to know what is right or be taught that way. I had to learn communication through dieting to my parents. There wasn't a thing that I had to communicate so strongly until I wanted to go diet and do my own diversion of things. I had to communicate about how I wanted my food and how I didn't want some things that they were having. I had to learn those things. And boy, did I get it wrong when I first started. I got to the point where it was, you know, backlashing to my parents, like, what the fuck, why are you putting too much oil on this thing, fuck this, why are you doing that, you're sidetracking my results because you can't make me dinner the different way. I learned how not to communicate and nearly get thrown out of my house. And that's as equally as bad as not doing any communication at all and just sitting there guilty inside, shameful inside, feeling like you're a trapped animal and not getting any of the results that you want to get. So there is a mid ground that you need to find that really gets what you want with the other person being on your side too. And you get that through explaining the logic of what you're doing. Hey, I need to do this with my diet. I need to do this with my breakfast. I need to do this with my thing because this happens when I do this. And it's really important for me to do this, this, and this because of this, this, and this. When you have those communications and then you stick to your word, beliefs and behaviors are repeated. And what you'll find, and what I find with my clients who I have this conversation with time and time again, the 1,000+ South Asians that I've worked with over my 7 years, if you have the conversation, then you're serious and you repeat the behavior, they get on your side very quickly. Because at the end of the day, they are your parents. They want to love you. They want to show love. And if their only way that they've showed love to you in the last 25 years is food, of course, they're not going to know how to show you love because they've been funneled down a path of food. Whereas parents also have to learn how to love you without showcasing food in these points too, which can be a learning point for them. And they have to get on board with this too. But if they constantly want to showcase you love with food, you have to have those conversations sooner rather than later. There is always going to be, and we teach flexibility within our diets. We teach, having the South Asian food if you want it, going out for dinner and having Japanese, McDonald's, a breakfast, avocado and toast, having these things with your client, with your mum, with your dad, with your auntie, with your uncle, with your family members. And we teach you how to do that. And there is always going to be a point where someone's expectations is always going to be larger than the deficit or the diet that you're on. Because if they're used to having 3 plates of food and you're only having 1 plate of food, the gap will be, hey, why are you not having this? Hey, why don't you have a bit more of this? Why don't you have a bit more of this to get to their expectations? Because if every dinner that you've had for 25 years is 3 plates of food, 4 on the side, and when she asks, do you want some more rice? You say no, but then she puts it on your plate and you eat it. Just that expectation that you're going to do it anyway until you change your behaviors, you change your actions daily. But there will be a gap between you can have flexibility, you can enjoy food with them, but you have to have these conversations. Most people from the South Asian community really like hard, aggressive diets where they have to say no to things. They have to go on juice diets, fasting diets, meal prep diets, where they say, hey, no, mom, I can't have that. I've got this meal over here. I'm only having this shake. Why? Because that's an easier conversation than it would be to say, hey, I'm going to have only a bit of your food because of this, this, and this. And then no wonder within the community, the South Asian community, we have a big influx of people just losing weight, gaining weight. They're a sucker for a dietitian in India, $50 a month. You get their plans, and then you suck 2 weeks later because you gain it all back because you can't stick to it. And the gap between sustainability of your diet is keeping it to as close as your current diet as possible with some tweaks that maintain that element of getting the goal versus not getting the goal. And the gap between you keeping it sustainable and you reverting back to old ways is the navigation between your communication with your family members, with the people that are around you, and your own self-discipline about not taking the piss with 2 plates of food, 3 plates of food, etc., etc. So if you want unsustainable methods, it's really easy to diet in a South Asian household for the time period that you actually diet. And then when you gain it all back, you're back to square one again. So it isn't a useful strategy. So my proposal is when you have these moments where you are looking for sustainability and you're looking for a diet that you can stick to, you have to also have a more of a bigger approach, a broader approach to fat loss. It comes down to communication, mindset, discipline, daily routine, relationships. And therefore, when you do that, that's massive. Now, someone's just asked a question within the live, which is really important. When eating family member foods, sign of a sign of respect. How do you get around this? So that is very, very true. The sign of respect is eating at people's houses, but there is a point where, and then you have to ask your question. This it's an emotional decision. Someone's respect. That's someone's opinion. That's someone else's expectations of you. That's like you getting pissed off at the weather because it's not sunny today because you asked it to be sunny. It's an emotional decision that we choose to be quote unquote respectful, but it's made by somebody else. You know, there's no rules, there's no laws, there's no like legislation that you have to eat at someone else's house. That is just an emotional thing that we make big because we're not willing to do the opposite. You know, I would ask you this, and I always break this down because I've had this time and time again. It's like, okay, well, what is the sign of respect? Having food at someone's house. Okay, how much? How much is respectful? Okay, so if they give it is respectful them telling you what to eat and you eating it, is respectful you having a bite of their food, is respectful cleaning the plate, is your respectful having the first plate, the second plate, the third plate. You can see how when you break it down logically, there's no rationale or any type of logic to the rule. So you have to create the rule. Autonomy, which is my brand, and the meaning of autonomy is about you having choice and control of every scenario that you're in so that you can get what you want from it, not what other people expect from you. So I would do this. Is like you can't please everybody. And if you try and chase pleasing parents, try and chase pleasing the people whose house you're going to, you will always end up fatter because that's their expectations. That's what they think you should have. And this is a reason why when people come around my house, I don't offer them anything. I don't offer them nothing unless I get specific thing that they're not dieting or that we pre-agree on it beforehand, because that's a respect of the people that are coming to your house, as well as you getting respect by giving them stuff. It's like at Christmas, if someone gives you a shit gift or something you don't want, at the end of the day, yes, it's a nice gift, but you don't want it. You don't want it. The essence is there and it's nice, but if you don't want it, it's going to go to waste. And you're not going to use it just because. So when someone says it's a sign of respect, then you have to work out how much you're willing to pander to someone else's needs and how much of it are you willing to not. So, for example, you go and you make it as flexible as possible. So we teach our clients what we call the one plate rule. So the one plate rule is where you have a plate of food at someone's house and you only have a plate of food. You don't have seconds, you don't have thirds, you don't have stars, you don't have desserts, you don't have drinks. You have one plate of food. But guess what? If you're always chasing someone else's respect, what happens when you get that? They offer you a second plate. What happens when they offer you a third plate? What happens if they offer you a fourth plate? Is that the point where you're going to say no? Like that, this is the bit where it's like, either way, there's a point of where you're at someone else's house that you have to say no. Let's make it the place in which you get the results from, not end up fucking guilty and not losing weight and annoyed at the scale weight the day after just because you've gone to Auntie's house and she's made pav bhaji and she's made you have three. So respect is massive and it's really important to keep. But at what cost are you willing to break that respect to get what your results are? Because if you're respecting someone else's wishes and not respecting your own, that's a massive, self autonomy issue. If you're constantly doing what everyone else wants, and I guess that's part of the community as well. Like how many thousand people that I've worked with have this thing where whatever their mum says goes. Whatever the mum is doing, whatever their mum is doing, that's what they have to do. Whatever they're preached on by their parents using guilt and shame, which is high within the research, it shows that people use guilt and shame to get what they want from their family. Is you're always pandering to someone else. And I can't make that any more clearer that even if you want to go on the most sustainable diet, even if you don't want to go on a diet, you're still going to have to say no out someone else's house because they will always continue to ask for food and always continue to kind of provide you with food, especially if you've been known as that big eater before, that person that likes the food that we get given and, 2 to 3 plates every single time. They're going to keep on asking you. So when we go into these scenarios, we have to be willing to upset somebody at some degree to get what we want. And it's about self discipline, self centeredness to some degree. Because when you break that down, it's an emotional belief that we are disrespecting people because we're not eating their food. But if you're going to their house and you're having a nice time with them and you're conversating with them and you're enjoying the time with them, that's respect. Going up to their house is respect. Spending time with them is respect. And it's it's in our nature to want to please other people. 100% agree. But at what cost? Because I don't see anybody, in my opinion, 1,000 people who have been with, who have been through the transformation where they've stayed in shape after they've lost weight. Every single person that I've worked with who stayed in shape long term had to deal with that mental block of quote unquote disrespect. They had to be quote unquote an outlier for a little while. They had to break someone's feelings a little bit to get what they wanted. And we can't always pander to someone else's needs. And I'm very passionate about that subject because it's about self-autonomy. It's like if you constantly do shit for other people and you're not watering your own plants, at some point your plant's going to die or you're going to feel shit. And then you're going to be depressed and you're going to be shit and you're going to have loads of fat. And then you're going to be unhappy doing things for somebody else. And then that becomes resentful. And then resentment leads to, disconcern. Disconcern leads to detachment. Detachment leads to you not feeling for anything. And therefore you feel annoyed and you're now in this position where you're feeling like crap, you feel like you're not in control, and you feel like every single time you go somewhere or do something, you're not in a you can't get the action that you want. But it's all how we believe this to be true. So that's how I would deal with the respect thing. Is like you've got three options. Don't eat any of the food. Deal with that disrespect and let them deal with that because that's a them problem, and that's a culture problem. Like that's a cultural dynamic that doesn't fit with self-autonomy or controlling your own food intake, because food has never been a method of dieting within the community, especially with the older generation. They healthy is chubby, right? So there's not going to use that. Second option is you have one plate of food and then you say no to the rest of them and you keep saying no until you get the outcome that you want. And then you hurt their feelings a little bit, but then you explain that you've had a plate of food, but you're dieting, and then therefore they're like, I helped, I had a bit of food, I had your food. That's okay, but I don't want a second plate. Thank you. And then the third one is that you do what they say and you have as many plates as you can do, and then you don't lose weight. Which one do you want? They're the three options that you've got. And the third one is that you can try and balance it out for the rest of the week. But one, you're going to be miserable. Two is that you're not going to stick to the diet long enough to do so. And then you end up in a yo-yo dieting cycle where you're aggressively dieting or fat dieting Monday to Friday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You go to a family member's house and you blow out all the calories and then you're back to square one again. So three, in my opinion, is not an option. Behavior change has to happen. And therefore, the belief system has to change. And your opinion on respect around food has to also change too. It can't stay the same if it's a massive factor of why people are gaining their weight back or actually not making progress in the first place. So that's the respect side of things. When it comes to the opinions of the pushy parents, is there's always going to be this moment where self growth versus other people's opinions of what they think you should do will always waver. And there are times and place over seasons. Seasons are like, I call them quarters. So quarter of the season, next season, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four are all seasons. And over those 4 seasons of the year, how you interact with your parents, how you interact with those in dieting, fitness, nutrition, profession, kids, family, over that quarters, they always change. So when you're dieting for a quarter, let's say you're changing your physique, getting in shape for a holiday, a wedding, yeah, you're going to have to withstand those elements of your criticism. For example, there's always going to be. You cannot go on a diet and change status quo and not receive criticism. My parents have let me, move to London when I was 19 years old. Let me pick my own courses. Let me do what I kind of wanted to do the whole life. They've supported me all the way through, and yet still, when it came down to food in the house, they were hypercritical and pushy towards doing particular things. And I would say my parents are the most laid back when it comes to me making decisions. And my mom is the biggest supporter of me and like my biggest cheerleader. But yet still with food, there was always this moment. And it happened for years, 3 to 5 years, when I was living at home and then I'd live out of home and come back. There would always be this thing, oh, is Nathan dieting? Or is Nathan, what do we need to get for Nathan? Or why is he eating differently? Da, 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 da. And there's always that. So for non-pushy parents, it's still an adjustment period. And it's about you finding that balance between communication, getting what you need, and then still having the things that they desire. So there's a really good quote called it says, want what your wants want. So instead of getting what you want, get what your wants want. So when you really deep that communication, when you deep that quote, it's about getting the emotion behind why you buy things. So or why you get things. So I want a new car to get status, or I want to give you food. I want to provide you food. I want to give you food. Okay, what does that want? What is that giving? By her giving you food, what does that give her? And when you can jump the food thing to that particular facet, what does she want? She wants to provide what she wants to care for you, what she wants to have an opportunity to help. And all you do is you just understand that, and then you sidetrack the whole food thing by getting her involved in the process and saying, "Hey, mum, I'd really like some help with this. I'd really like to help me stay on this diet. I'd really like you to kind of let me stay away from these foods because I'm trying to stay away from them because I overeat them all the time. And I really like some help with the preparation of food or my breakfast, or I'd like you to come on a walk with me. I'd like you to come and do the exercise with me at the gym or the walking or the weekend stuff. I really like support, because if we know that she wants to help and support you, and she wants to kind of, show that through food and her actions and love, then if we then direct her in the right area, you can get what you want from the scenario and divert her focus on food and divert her attention on helping you with your food, helping you with your exercise. And there's so many times over the last 1,000 people that I work with, is that the mum ends up being the person that joins the coaching after them, because they see the effects of that person. They see the effects of the mood, the fat loss, how easy it was to kind of follow. And then they end up joining and changing the family dynamic. When you can change a kitchen and the 7 people living in the house, you change those 7 people's lives, not just the one person that's making the first diet. You might be the first person in your family to make the changes and deal with that backlash of the pushy quote unquote parents. But you could also be the person that changes your mum's life, your dad's life, your sister's life, your grandchildren's life when they come through, because you're making everyone involved in that process too. And then, like, fourth point is you're not going to get away from it. Now, most people, they go in those fad diets and those are really aggressive diets to just cut the word no out, say no to everything. No, I don't want anything. No, 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 nothing, nothing, nothing. And most people struggle with moderation because it requires a higher level of communication and a higher level of emotional intelligence to have a conversation with someone that you value, you trust, like your mom, and be open with her and confront her and create resistance. But it's always going to be there. And when you can create things like pathways, so, hey, mom, I appreciate that you're wanting to give me food. However, for my goal, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like your support on it. And my girlfriend Sarah, she's great with communication, and she runs a course for people that want to kind of get better at communicating in a relationship or dating. And she uses like the statement like, "I understand X. It would be really helpful if I would love your support on that." And if you can use that framework, you won't have issues. The only other issue you'll have is when people don't understand. So I like this saying, it's either you don't know what to do or that you don't want to do it. So if you have the communication with your pushy, whoever it is, and you explain to them and you communicate very, very well with them, and they still yet are to be on board, or they continue with their pushiness, it will be about an explanation of the thing that you're trying to do, and the communication around how you tackle them not being part of that or them not understanding. So you can go down the two phases. You can go down the route of education. You can go down the route of giving more resources, and you can getting them involved in the food side of things. But on the flip side of things is that sometimes you can't change people, and it's not your job to make your mum understand what you're doing. It's you're making your mum understand that you're doing it and that she can support you or she can't support you. And like I said, most times, 99% of the time, is that family members understand once you give them enough information, and then you provide that information a few times over, because it's not going to be just once you have a one conversation. This is the biggest mistake, where people go through this process, is that they think just because they've had a conversation with their mum once or said no once, that means that they don't ever have to say it again. This constant battle of no, no, thank you. Yes, I'll just have a little bit of this. Or no, actually, I'm not going to have that today because I'm going to have this later. Hey, yeah, I appreciate you making that for me. I'm going to have a little bit of it. And then, you can have the rest of it. No, I don't want seconds. Is a constant reaffirmment within the South Asian community. That means that you will actually have to continually do this. It's not a one-stop shop where you say one thing and now it's done. And most people don't think of it as an ongoing process. But I could go home tomorrow and I would, eat my food at my mum and dad's house for 4 days on the run, and I'd still get questions. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, hey, aren't you over that phase now? Like, why are you weighing that food out? Or like, why are you having so much protein? Like, isn't that bad for you? Or like, are you still drinking those protein shakes? Yes, mum, I am. I am drinking those protein shakes. Yes, I am portioning my food up because I care about the way that I look. I care about the way that I feel. I need to feel good to run a business. I need to feel good to, be in a relationship. I need to feel good to run go for the dog walks. And therefore I choose to do this at a higher level to get more benefit out of it. Um, and those conversations still happen. And I've been doing this since I've been 18. I've been talking to my mum about food since I was 18. I'm now 32. And yet there still isn't a complete understanding. And it's about you understanding that it's not about them. So the pushy parents can be pushy. They can have their opinions. They can have your thought process. They can push you down a path where they're telling you that you're too skinny. They can push you down a path where you are, you don't look ill. You don't look ill. You look like you got cancer. Some of my clients have been said that they've got cancer before. Now, I don't know if about you, but I would not want to be called or said that I look like I've got cancer. Firstly, wild that you would say that right in front of somebody. Secondly, it's not factually true, and I don't know what someone with cancer looks like. I imagine it's traumatic. And thirdly, it's a bit of fucking weight loss. That's all it is. Like, they've lost weight from their face, and maybe mumsy thinks that auntie's going to look at them and think that she's not feeding them, or feeding you, but it's a bit of weight loss. So you're going to continue to get this conversation because they're not meant to understand. They're meant to just let you do what you need to do. And hopefully they will join you. And if they don't, you've got your benefit, you've got what you needed out of it. And then you will be the light of which you've changed the trajectory of your path of your family. Think about this. If both your parents have got type 2 diabetes, they have an issue with their lifestyle. They have an issue with how much they eat, how much they drink, or how much they fucking don't move. If you continue on that path, you are already 77% likely to have type 2 diabetes if both of your parents have it. If their information to you is to go in one direction and they have type 2 diabetes and they have health concerns and they're going to get cardiovascular diseases and they don't move, maybe we shouldn't be taking advice from people who are in the worst possible state. And it's harsh to say that, but as same as my mom and dad, I would not listen to them on health advice. Probably wouldn't listen to them on financial advice either. I would listen to an expert in that particular field who has the credentials and the results to prove it. You wouldn't listen to a financial advisor who drives a Ford Fiesta because that means that they haven't got enough finances. They haven't accumulated wealth. Whereas you would listen to someone who drives a G-Wagon, has multiple properties, has an investment portfolio, dabbles in crypto, dabbles in these, he's financially stable. You would be listening to those guys about nutrition, about health, or about finances, sorry, because of what they have. So therefore, if you have people around you that are giving you opinions and they're in the worst possible state, the polar opposite of what you need, there has to be a logical thought here where you filter down what they're saying and go, well, if they're sitting there thinking, oh, this is bad for you, this is good for you, and they're sitting there not moving, overweight, massive belly, type 2 diabetes, other cardiovascular issues, or they're just generally not doing the same thing that you see other people doing that are fit and healthy, we shouldn't be taking advice from them. And that's the same as what I would do. I would hope that you see me and you see that I've got loads of results on my page. I practice what I preach. I look half decent, hopefully. And at the same time as I'm preaching about the South Asian community, about making sure that traditional foods stay in to some degree, making sure that you can have flexibility with food, make sure that you can have, food at home, work, social, travel. Like, I'm trying to live and breathe the element so that you can see that I understand that this is what it needs to take to change your health and fitness. And I would expect that you wouldn't go and take advice from someone that's overweight when they're trying to tell you about their health and fitness. So it's about separating logic and emotion with the people, because those people have birthed you, they've fed you, they've covered you, they've supported you, they've had all these things for you. But that doesn't mean that they're the right person to give you fitness advice and nutrition advice. And you have to be skeptical around that. You have to trust nothing, and not, you have to dissect what they're actually saying. So as much as my ramble is here, hopefully this was useful. Pushy parents, it comes down to three things. One, do it anyway, and you're going to get backlash whether you do it 100% or you do it 50%. Teach them via showing them that you're serious. If you stick to your diet for 30 days on the run, they're going to see that you're not fucking cheating on weekends. They're going to see that you're not eating random chocolates, and then not just see you doing the things that you're saying I'm not doing. And thirdly is like, when you go to other people's houses, think about what is respectful and what is giving over control to the person because you're fearful of disrespecting. If you eat one plate of food at someone's house and you've gone to their place, you've spent time with them, you're over there chatting about bubbles or whatever you're chatting about, you're showing them respect by being there. You're showing respect by giving them your time. You don't have to show respect by having 3 plates of food. And you will break someone's feelings, and you have to be comfortable to do that multiple times, because that's an expectation from somebody else, and you can't live by someone else's expectations. You can't live trying to please other people, because then you don't please yourself, and you actually don't get anywhere, because everyone else has different expectations. So one person could say, oh, it's disrespect if you don't have any of my food, it's disrespect if you don't have 3 plates of my food. What the fuck are you going to do there? Just constantly eat food, just worried that you're going to upset somebody. My opinion would be book them and do as best you can to accommodate it. But you need to have a cutoff point for your own boundaries, have your own autonomy with what is right for you and what is wrong for you. And my opinion would be the 1 plate rule. Once you've had 1 plate, you've had enough respect, you've had their food, you've compromised your results a little bit to have a nice time. The rest of the time is now about saying no until you get what you want. Hopefully this was useful, guys. Any other questions that you've got, is if there are particular subjects you'd like me to kind of chime in on these lives, please do let me know in the comments. And they'll be coming up on YouTube and on the podcast networks very, very soon. We're just editing the first 2, and then they're going to be on live first, and then they're going to be on podcast second. So guys, hopefully have a lovely Tuesday. Speak to you soon.